Hello and welcome to Total Saints Podcast Fans Forum. With no game to ruin the weekend for everyone. This weekend, we're taking the opportunity to take your questions, which can be fired in on YouTube and lots of other channels. As long as it goes to a Total Saints Pod account, we should be able to see it. Yep. So it's going to be a little bit more informal than usual. We don't really we've never done this before on this platform, so we're not entirely sure how it's going to go. So it might be amateur hour a little bit, but hopefully we can have an enjoyable evening. So I'm going to get straight into it. One of the questions that we had up front was from Ray Stacey on the screen there. If those players we expect to leave do so, what positions do you think we need to strengthen? I would say defensive midfielder and goalkeeper. Well, there's kind of two parts to that. So if I go to Steve first, which players do you expect to leave?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of players who you would imagine will be linked with moves. How many of them actually do end up out the door is another matter. I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of players there who probably think that they are top level Premier League players. There are some who we may strongly disagree on that opinion. So, I mean, just quickly, I've got the squad list in front of me. Looking down, I mean, Aaron Ramsdale will get a move to another Premier League club. I mean, let's be brutally honest. As much as we would like to keep him, we wouldn't want to keep his $100,000 a week wages. No. So I think that's a very easy deal for us to do with anybody in in kind of the sort of mid-table in the Premier League. I mean, Bournemouth I saw was mentioned a week or so ago, which makes a fair bit of sense. West Ham maybe would be another one who would. I mean, they'd certainly swallow the wages. That wouldn't be a problem for them. I mean, then you look down. Walker Peters will be gone. He's out of contract, of course. Harwood-Bellis has been linked with moves, and he's got himself an England cap and England goal this season, but performances have been a little bit hit and miss, really, I would say.
It's an interesting one with him, isn't it? Because he changed agent a few weeks ago, and at the time it was someone somewhere said, "Oh, it's not to engineer a move for the end of the season." But isn't it remarkable that as soon as he gets this new agent, suddenly there's articles all over the place linking him with Tottenham, Newcastle, Fulham. I've seen, West Ham. It just that just seems to be the scummy side of the business that just keeps on happening. I mean, I personally don't expect Amo-Ameyaw to be here next season. So yeah, I agree with you on that one. Moving on.
Yeah, next, Jan Bednarek, of course. Even Juric told us that he had an offer from Roma in January, but chose to stay put. I mean, maybe that's an offer that gets put back on the table, and he has a longer think about it this time. I mean, he's been here a while, hasn't he? And I mean, maybe it's time to kind of have a complete clean sweep of the old guard, because he's a guy that's been around for a while, has been involved in kind of all the calamities, really, as well as some high moments as well. In fairness,
yeah.
I mean, Bella Kotchap. I mean, we've been trying to get rid of him for about 2 years now, it seems. Maybe the fact that he's actually getting some Premier League minutes at the moment might persuade someone to actually throw some money at us. Who knows? Into midfield, you look at. I mean, Downs, of course, wanted to move, but I'm not sure that'll be anything that will be on the cards in the summer. Perhaps Matty Fernandez will be an obvious target for other clubs. He's been the one absolute hit, I think, in terms of our transfer business.
Yeah.
In the summer, I mean, Ramsdale, of course, has been fine, but I think everyone knew what to expect with Aaron Ramsdale. Fernandez has come in as more or less a complete unknown to, I would say, 99% of the fan base, myself included, and has, much like Charlie Alcaraz 2 years ago, has slotted in brilliantly. And you can see that there is a player that already kind of knows what is required at this level. So yeah, he's another one. Tyler Dibbling is an interesting one, I think. I mean, the talk of 50, 60 million transfers has quietened down over the last probably month or so as his profile in the team has reduced a little bit, I guess. Of course, he had a few weeks out injured. And I still think we rushed him back. I mean, he didn't look fit against Burnley, and of course he's been coming off the bench in the other games and having he had a minor impact, didn't he, against Bournemouth, but against Chelsea he wasn't on the pitch for long enough to really make any impact. I'm not sure I actually remember him even getting on the ball at all. It was a bizarre passage of play in that last sort of 15, 20 minutes in that game. And then you look up front and, well, I mean, I guess Paul Onuachu has shown that he can score goals. If you give him the right service. And well, no, but then, I mean, he's still basically our joint top scorer, isn't he? In the league, which is fairly ludicrous. But it's, I mean, that's kind of where you're at. Those are the players that I think will at least stand a chance of remaining Premier League players if an offer came in that was right. Yeah. But I think, I mean, we will drive a hard bargain as we did at the start of last season, where we did some really good business, I thought, in terms of the money that we were able to generate, which then allowed Jason Wilcox and Russell Martin to kind of refresh enough to give us a solid base to push on and get promoted.
Yeah, just I should have introduced you earlier, Martin. So this is Martin Sanders, as you know. I am because I'm an amateur at this sort of pseudo presenting lark. I should have introduced you earlier, so sorry that I didn't. So, question for you, Martin, is that we've got some players who have in that list that Steve put out there just now, and one he missed actually, Adam Armstrong. We've got players who have proven at championship level. In your opinion, do we keep these players for next season in the championship, or do we look at players who have proved they're not good enough at the Premier League level and basically, cut ties with them if we can, or do we, I guess it's a question of do we have a 2-year plan, which involves obviously getting promoted and then trying to survive, or do we just worry about the season in front of us? How do you kind of see that?
I think it's going to be interesting how it unravels. I think it's a big summer. The biggest concern for me, and it has been for a long time, is the damage that's been done over the season so far, and the damage that will be done to the players between now and the end of the season. It's how we recover from it and how they recover from that losing mentality. And, that dressing room must be absolutely on the floor now, no matter what anyone says. We've all played sport, and if you're in it, you're losing week in, week out. Morale's low, and somebody's got to pick that group up and go again. How many of that group remain? I'm not convinced that, like Adam Armstrong's, like you make a good point on him. We forget about him. He's out on loan. Will he have the hunger to come back and do it again? I think he could do it again, but will he personally want to come back and do it again and drive us back to the Premier League? We need some hungry players. My biggest concern, Glenn, is from what I've seen over the last few months, is a lot of people downing tools, not running for the club, not playing for the club. Francis Benali's even come out and said it this week. He said it in the Echo this week. He thinks that players could be given more. I think we can all see it as fans. They're not showing. Yeah, they might not have enough quality at times at this level, but it's unforgivable not to try to run. That last goal against Chelsea sums it all up really for me. So I'd be keen to see a few deposits from this year out the door. A lot more than last time round. But like Steve said, they will drive a really hard bargain like they always do. And we'll end up with people with us that we probably didn't expect to stay. But it will be an interesting summer.
I mean, it's interesting people throughout the squad, the likes of Kamaldeen Sulemana, who's done well in high-profile games, like against Manchester United. He did very well, and you sort of like wonder if that'll be enough for him to get a move somewhere. How many of the big clubs or any of the Premier League clubs will be spending reasonable amounts of money in the summer with all the PSR stuff going on and stuff like that. So getting back to the original question, if you assume that we're losing Diblin, Fernandez, Harwood-Bellis, Walker-Peters, Ramsdale, possibly Sulemana, Onuachu, where does the obvious strengthening need to be done? I mean, for me, it's the attack. It's the same as it was at the start of the season. It's the attacking midfields and the strikers. I think we've got enough for a championship level defence. Possibly. I mean, you got Ronnie Edwards, Nathan Wood, Jack Stevens will almost certainly still be here. But midfield wise and attack wise, you got Sam Adozie coming back. I mean, but the only forward who's definitely going to be here, I feel, is Ross Stewart. Yeah. And you want to rely on that. So there's going to have to be some money spent, and as we know, players at the top end of the pitch are difficult to come by. So do you sort of largely agree with that, Steve, or is there other areas that you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one because I think everybody would have probably said similar at the start of last season in the Championship that okay, yeah, we're still going to have a relatively strong squad, but in attack, I think we felt at the start of the season certainly that we might struggle against the teams that play with a low block, and how do you break them down? Because that was always our problem in the Premier League. And actually, I think we underestimated or rather overestimated the quality of Championship defences overall.
Yeah.
And we ended up scoring 90 odd goals, and actually attacking wasn't the problem at all. It was the 60 that we let in at the other end. But
all those goals, that was a thing, wasn't it?
Well, it's fun to an extent. Yeah, and I do think. I mean, I think we would probably want at least one more centre back. If we assume, as you say, those three that you mentioned are staying, are probably the only ones that will stay. I mean, maybe this French kid is the next thing best thing since sliced bread and slot straight into the team at the age of 19. I mean, it's possible. Seems to have been getting rave reviews over the last year or so. So yeah, perhaps we've played a blinder and got him in on the cheap and give him 6 months to kind of get up to speed with English football, and maybe in the summer he's ready to go. We'll see. I mean, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? That we don't have to spend any money on that particular area of the pitch. Fullbacks are an interesting one because I think all of the fullbacks that we have, you would say they would kind of be fine in the Championship. I mean, obviously, Walker-Peters is going to go. He's out of contract. And, yeah, fair enough. But beyond that, you've then got Bree, Wellington, Sugawara, Ryan Manning. Anybody else I'm forgetting? Maybe some youngsters that might be...
Charlie Taylor.
Possibly.
Charlie Taylor.
Yeah,
Juan Larios.
Yeah, possibly. Of course.
Yeah.
So yes, there's actually quite a lot of options there. So I would imagine that spending on defence may be, unlike the country, amusingly, maybe kind of one thing that we can kind of set to one side, really. And actually, it's the midfield and the attack that's where we need to focus our attention. I think certainly midfield is going to be something that will need to be looked at in kind of real depth by whoever it is that is the manager next season. I mean, we'll come on to Juric in a minute, but like Shay Childs has obviously been out on loan all season. You would assume he comes back and more or less walks straight into that first 11, almost as Ugochukwu's kind of natural replacement, really. Flynn Downs, we've already seen, is brilliant in the Championship. Whether we can kind of get back into his head properly, because let's be honest, the last month will have done some serious damage there, I would imagine, from a sort of emotional and mental standpoint. And how do you kind of re-engage him and make sure that he's firing on all cylinders in that midfield next season? Him and Charles, and then you're looking at kind of the sort of attacking links there. I mean, the players we're likely to still have around there's not a huge amount. I mean, Ryan Fraser will be good for the occasional appearance, I guess. Lallana, what's it? I can't remember what his contract situation was. Whether we gave him a 2-year deal or
No,
only
it was
a one.
It was one.
So in which case he's probably not going to be renewed. You would imagine. So you're now then kind of looking elsewhere as to, right, okay, who can we bring in? What's the budget? Do you actually go all out and get someone who is already a difference maker in the Championship, but that you have a pretty high level of confidence that they can do it one level up? So that will likely mean spending upwards of 15-20 million quid on a single player in the Championship. That feels not like the sort of thing that we would do, but it kind of also feels like the sort of thing we might have to do if you are taking that sort of medium to long term view of, we're not just looking at a player that's going to get us up, but one that's going to give us even the slightest chance of keeping us up the following year.
So it is an interesting one. So Gary Fox has just made a point. He said Brereton, Diaz, Armstrong and Archer in the Championship will be a great front line. And that totally illustrates the point, because yes, it might work in the Championship, but none of those three.
There's natural balance with those three as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
Archer through the middle, Armstrong on the right, Brereton, Diaz down the left.
Yeah. And the other balance is that they're all crap in the Premier League. And do we want to, then that sort of comes back to the question, if we were in the Premier League next season, then you wouldn't want any of those three anywhere near it. But yeah, and this is the point I'm sort of like trying to make is that do you want to go down that route, or do you want to rebuild with players who can maybe do it at Premier League level? But I guess it's going to be a bit of a mix and match job. But anyway, moving on. I think that's enough of the squad rebuild. So Martin, Phil Horstrup put a question in, and it's the good old manager one. So Mr. Uric next season, yes or no? That should be quite a simple one to answer.
Absolutely not, from what I've seen and what I think we've all seen. Somebody said to me on a comment the other day, "You change your mind with the wind." I was actually really excited when he came in. I thought, do you know what, he might just get this lot organised. He may stop making us sloppy to concede goals from set play. I just thought we might see a team that we're going to play a different way, but we're going to fight. And he was going to really, there's a lot of talk he's going to play this heavy metal football. We haven't seen any of it. We've seen no press. We've seen a lack of organisation. We've seen players played out of position. You're playing an attacking midfielder, a Championship attacking midfielder at right centre back, a Championship stroke League One right back playing at right side centre back, and we had a centre back playing against Chelsea, had not played pretty much for a year and a half. It was always going to end in disaster. But what infuriates me about these football people, these so-called experts, they set up and it's failing. It's not working. Everyone can see it, but it continue to do it. We've been too easy to play through for such a long time. It's like, why he said when he become the manager, they know me. He said, I know them, but they don't know me. From what I think we've all seen, I think you said it on the pod last week, Glenn, that he certainly doesn't know the players, because he wouldn't be doing what he's doing with them right now. I think a lot of the form of Tyler Dibbling is down to the manager. I just don't think I don't know if the manager, it just seems like he doesn't seem happy, does he? He doesn't seem like that game against Brighton and Hove down at the Amex. He was brilliant that night. We haven't seen anything like that from Tyler again. Since Russell's gone, we haven't seen that Tyler, because he did see Russell as a bit of a father figure. And I know Russell had critics, but he was certainly he was good with the younger players. He had a lot of them on side, certainly Tyler, and he just doesn't look happy. And I think he has to go. For me, I don't see him being our future. I think if he stays next season, it'd be turgid. I think it'd be horrific.
I think, the sort of supplementary question to that is, does he carry on for the rest of this season? I'll answer that one myself. I mean, the way I see that is that there's not a lot of point in getting rid of him on one hand, because we're going to finish bottom, whoever's manager. It's just a case of whether we get 12 points or not. We are going to finish bottom, even if we got bloody Jurgen Klopp for the last 12 games, we'd still finish bottom because of the players we've got. But so on the one hand, there's no point in getting rid of him. But you made an interesting point about the damage being done to the players. If we go out, for argument's sake, and we play Liverpool next week and we get annihilated, then there's got to be a point where it's too damaging to carry on with this guy. So on the one hand, there's no point in replacing him, and on the other hand, maybe there is. If the defeats get ridiculous. I mean, I was discussing this with Steve during the week. If we get beat by Wolves at home, being mathematically relegated is going to come round very, very quickly, and we could well have 8 games left. And does that change the conversation with regards to whether he goes now or later? But I'm not buying Dragon Solak's recently said he's our manager for next season. I'm just not buying it.
I think Solak had to say that. He was asked the question and he gave the answer that, I mean, he would have completely undermined everything if he'd said anything different from that, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the obvious next question. This has been asked by lots of people. I'm seeing Trish Sykes. I'm seeing RGR Ryan. I'm seeing Lorraine Beckett all saying the same thing. And the name that is constantly coming up is Danny Rohl. Obviously, formerly Ralph Hasenhutl's assistant manager here. Assistant coach at, what was it, Bayern Munich. Assistant coach at the German national team. Now manager of Sheffield Wednesday. Obviously knows the Championship. And as a relatively young age, don't know how old he is. He doesn't look like he's in his 40s yet. He has obviously got potential to be a Premier League manager. So, I mean, for me, that's the sort of profile of manager we want. So, what do you kind of think of that, Steve? Obviously, there's the connection with Johan Spors as well. Do you think that will happen, or will we be looking elsewhere?
I mean, I think we will probably look around just to kind of dot I's and cross T's. But the fact that we spoke, I mean, we very obviously spoke with Rohl in December when we got rid of Russell Martin. So he's obviously someone who is on our radar, even without the obvious connections to. I mean, I'm never a big fan of sort of making appointments based on somebody or signings based on he knows the club, because quite frankly with us that may genuinely be a terrible thing. But I think somebody who has kind of had to deal with a lot of outside noise, as he has done at Sheffield Wednesday with their utter lunatic of an owner, but also a very expectant fan base. I mean, Sheffield Wednesday haven't been in the top flight since 2000. And that's a big club to have not been playing Premier League football for 25 years. So for him to be kind of managing expectations at that level, whilst also showing that he's got a little bit of tactical flexibility, but also in a system that kind of makes sense for the level. And also let's be honest, it doesn't hurt that he's using one of our loan players to help him out. A guy who's likely to be an important first teamer for us when we go down next season. So I think it would be an appointment that would make sense. But of course, the one kind of fly in the ointment is this buyout clause and how much it's going to cost us. Because how much is it going to cost to appoint a manager who, okay, we know he can get a god awful team sort of bottom of the Championship comfortably into mid-table without spending a huge amount of money. They've spent a bit, but nothing that is sort of remotely beyond what you would expect a club of Sheffield Wednesday's resources to have. And I mean, he's still got Barry Bannon in that midfield. I mean, he must be about 75 by now, and he's still running that midfield, and he's So Rohl has kind of taken the good bits that they already had and has brought in a steeliness to them and a little bit of flair as well going forwards. And I think that's kind of the sort of balance that you're really looking for here, is someone who doesn't just focus on one end of the pitch or the other. I mean, we've seen take Scott Parker as an example of a manager who clearly only thinks about the defensive side of things at the moment and just relies on the fact that he's got better players than basically every other team apart from Leeds in the division, and that they'll come up with something at the other end and win enough games. Frankly, it looks like they might even fall a little bit short on that. And yet there are other managers who are ultra attacking, don't do enough defensively, and I mean you could make a coherent argument that Russell Martin maybe fell into that bracket. Ultimately got us up, but didn't give us a huge amount of hope once we were up here. So I think it's important to have someone who strikes the balance. Rohl does that, I think, but it may be that there are alternatives of a similar flavour, if you like. Take someone like Carlos Corberán, who of course was also linked in December before he then went and took the Valencia job. Now it looks like he might just about keep them up, having sort of they looked fairly doomed. But that is another fan base that is not sort of renowned for having huge amounts of patience. So it may be that he thinks that, okay, I come in, do this job, keep him up, and then maybe he's available again in the summer. That might be something. Might be another alternative, and would likely be a lot cheaper as well.
We've had an alternative.
And we wouldn't have to deal with Chansiri.
Yeah, we've had an alternative posted in the chat, and it's an out of work manager. So I'll ask you your opinion on this one, Martin. Mr. Sean Dyche.
No, you wouldn't want Dyche. I don't think so. No, the football he plays, dear me. It'd be very similar to what we see now. Yes, he's experienced, but I saw some of the football that Everton played this season, and it might work in the Championship, but it's very old school. Yeah. I'm very much with Steve. I like Danny Rohl. I think he'd be a good fit for us. He's already gone to their chairman and they're trying to renegotiate his exit fee. So if he does get offers in the summer, I think Cameron said in the chat a little while ago that he lives in Germany and he said there's a lot of German clubs interested in him. So if he is their target and he's their man, they need to do it quite quickly. And I think from the football club perspective, they need to do it quickly, get the man in place. Russell was a little bit late in the door, wasn't he? But they would have, Sport Republic need to learn from the mistakes. But what they did right in that summer when they brought in Russell, they brought in a man that definitely brought the club together. The business, like Steve said, wasn't bad. And if they could do something similar, somebody that's going to get the fans on side, because first and foremost, you need us on side. You need to sell season tickets. You need the atmosphere. Then you need the players on side, and it all starts to move in the right direction. I think if you've got a man in charge that nobody really believes in, the players don't really like him, the fans don't like him, you're on to a hide into nothing before it's even started. So I think the appointment's really important, what they do. I think it's really, really important. Let's just hope that they're sensible and they don't throw an absolute curveball in and leave this clown in charge.
Yeah, so there's a very good comment in here by Barry Gentry. So that's a good comment. It's something I've said something similar. So we've had the high press with Ralph, long ball with Nathan Jones, the sort of possession-based Russell Martin stuff, and the current sort of lack of style that we've got with Uric. We need a manager who doesn't just have one style of play. Alfie said this last week. It does my head in. These managers have only got one way of playing, and they come in midway through a season, and with the players they've been given, just play the same way or try and play the same way. So personally, I think it's important to get someone who is adaptable. I think you both made good points about Danny Rohl, Steve, about the sort of way he manages attack and defence, and Martin with the way he seems to be able to change tactics. So I would be happy if he was appointed. I mean, it's any manager you get in, you're never going to be 100% convinced. It's the old if you want guarantees by a washing machine thing, isn't it? You're never going to be 100% convinced it's going to be right. But I will be happy if it was Danny Rohl. But if it's someone else, then at least this time, with the appointment of this manager as opposed to the current one, we have more confidence that it's not a Rasmus Ankersen decision, and that it has come from a director of football who does have a little bit of a background. So moving on, Sonny Chew is obviously having a good day. What's the chances of us going straight down to League One? Well, Luton are having a good go at it. They did beat that lot from down the road last week, so that was good. Just scrolling the someone's had enough. This is depressing. Have a good night. See you later, Andrew. Only lasted
positive right now.
yeah, he only lasted 24 minutes before he posted that. So has anyone got any more? I'm just
Someone's
sort of
mentioned Simon Rusk, haven't they? Darren's mentioned. We were talking about managers. I think that's an interesting one. Simon Rusk, does he come in? You know, if it's horrific at Liverpool at the weekend, and like you say, we go and play Wolves at home. I think it's an international break. Am I right, Steve? After Wolves,
week after that, I think. Because I think 22nd we've got. It is the international break. Sorry, yes, you're right. Yeah, because we've got.
They could potentially give it to
two
Russ
awful games at Wembley.
Yeah. Do you think they potentially give it to Russ to the end of the season, with maybe Adam Lallana working with him?
I mean, I think if they got to the point where they felt they had to get rid of Juric, then yes, I mean that'd be the obvious thing to do, as just a holding pattern. He showed a bit of competence in the 2 games that he managed in December. So yeah, I think that would be the sensible choice. You're not having to outlay millions of pounds to get someone else in, who, again, into a situation where there's no upside to anybody coming from outside to take the job now, I would say. Because you finish bottom, and actually you look at that the month of May, those fixtures. I mean, Leicester away. I mean, that's kind of a cup final, really, in terms of the points record, isn't it? And then we go Man City at home, Everton away, the last ever game at Goodison Park, where I mean the place is going to be rocking or booing for sort of time eternal if they don't get their way, and then Arsenal at home. I mean, it's very difficult to see us getting anything out of those 3 games, even if we were playing well. So yeah, it's one of those where I think you wouldn't go outside, you wouldn't go external, and Rusk is literally sat there and he's already done 2 games this season. So yeah, I think that would be the obvious move to make. It wouldn't be overly controversial either. Okay,
so we got Simon Hill. Thoughts on getting Ralph back? Is that Ralph Kruger? No, I don't think it is. I can't imagine that Ralph Hasenhüttl would take a look at the squad that we've got now and think he left with them when we had a much better squad than that, and we were in a much better place. So I can't imagine he would have to have some sort of mind-altering drugs in order to come back to this situation.
He'd probably have more money to spend than he did during his entire time.
Moving on, Cameron is being a little bit mischievous. Do you think we play the kids versus Wolves to ensure Leicester and Ipswich come down with us? I think they're going to do that perfectly well on their own, to be perfectly honest. I can't see Leicester or Ipswich or ourselves getting within 10 points of whoever's 4th bottom. It's the old issue. I mean, 6 teams have now, if you count Burnley, Sheffield United, and Luton from last year, it'll be 6 teams. The last 6 teams that have tried have all gone straight back down. Will there be any appetite to change that from the Premier League? I very much doubt it. So it'll be a similar sort of thing.
Do they?
No, I mean, I watched Leeds play Sheffield United in the Championship a few nights ago, and it's a very very committed, fast-paced game, but the quality was ropey. And you look at the Leeds starting lineup, and it's pretty similar to what they had in the playoff final against us. They've obviously replaced a few players who left, but they really are no better than they were last year. In fact, I would say they're probably worse based on what I've seen. So I think we're going to be, and they're the best out of the teams in the Championship. So I'd be very surprised if it's, I would
say as well,
not. Yeah, be very surprised if it's not the same next year. Though Frank Lampard's Coventry are making a move, so that'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. So if they come up, then I imagine the points record, even if we don't dip under it this season, someone will next season. So. Someone else has mentioned Nick Obi. Gareth Southgate's mentioned. Can't see that. I think he's had enough.
I don't think Southgate's going to be looking for a new poison chalice to take hold of anytime soon. To be honest,
Rohl. I hope I pronounced that correctly. What would your ideal squad number next season, as in number of players? I assume that means. If we were to come up the following season, and how would you spend the next season? Well, we kind of covered how we'd spend next season, but I mean, we do. It surprised me when, and it's turned out to be very, very poor, the way we came up last year, and we decided we needed more players, and we signed a load of squad fillers, basically. And in the Premier League, you've got less games. Obviously, they're more, they're quicker and more intense and stuff like that. But I mean, I don't know how many players we had in the Championship. We've probably got more now. Do you think generally we need to go with a smaller squad or a bigger squad? Obviously, the Championship, it's a game every 3 days, 3 or 4 days. So how do you think you balance that, Martin?
I think the Championship, as we know, it's so relentless and it's so physical, and you pick up injuries a lot. You're playing so many more games. You're in all the cup competitions earlier. You need a decent squad. The squad this year is obviously too big. I think next year you need, an extra player for every position. You need 3 keepers, obviously, but who's the keeper going to be? We didn't speak about keepers. Who? It won't be Ramsdale. Will that be Gavin Bazunu next year? He's trying to make his comeback. We all know that Alex has probably had his day. I think you need a squad that's going to be competitive. But yeah, what do we have? 20
on that one. I think it'll be McCarthy who starts in goal. To be honest,
yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
Just think
he's got two-year deal. 2-year deal.
Yeah, he's here next year, so I think he's a better profile for a goalkeeper in the Championship. It's just more dominant in the air, and funnily enough, in hindsight, if we weren't playing Russell Martin football, we probably could have saved the 25 million or whatever it was we spent on Aaron Ramsdale and spent it somewhere else. But obviously, he wasn't going to be able to play the Russell Martin way. But I can see him at the moment. I mean, we don't know what will happen. Maybe a new incoming manager has got a goalkeeper he particularly wants. But I see no real reason why McCarthy won't be in goal in the Championship next season. So, right, Ben Sharman really needs to buy some Premier League quality players for the Championship. Yeah, the trouble is convincing them, isn't it? And being able to afford it. Luke Farrandon, Sports Republic have made so many mistakes since January 22. Can they recover from this embarrassing season and 2 relegations? How do they get the fans back on side? And I think Martin kind of covered that with his comment about getting the manager in and looking like they know what they're doing. First off, we have a Bournemouth fan. Well, they won a game, didn't they, yesterday? So he's probably happy. Terry Russell, hi. Enjoy it while it lasts, my friend. Look where we were in 2016. And
football goes in circles. Football goes in circles.
Absolutely. Unlikely maths. Even if we manage to avoid beating Derby's points record, this will be our worst Premier League relegation. Oh, will this be our worst Premier League relegation? Even if we manage to beat it, yes, I would say so. Anyone disagree with that?
It depends on the context, really, doesn't it? I mean, I think because this season we were massive favourites to go down, so I think us being in the bottom three all season comes as no surprise to anybody. However, if you look at the two other Premier League relegations, start the season, I mean, maybe 2 years ago there would have been a few fringe people who might have put some money on us to be kind of one of those teams that kind of has a little bit of a surprise dip. But certainly 2005, nobody was saying, "Oh, Southampton will go down." It was, I mean, that was a huge surprise that we made such a pig's ear of it. And again, that was three managers signing squad players rather than players that actually improve your first 11. All the usual. I mean, there is a list of kind of bullet points that you tick off for these surprise relegations, where the things that teams do, appointing manager from hated local rivals is a kind of less trodden path, but one that we went on there, and that went swimmingly, didn't it? I think, as I say, it depends on what context you're applying kind of worst relegation. In terms of us being, I think people kind of having that feel from very early in the season that we're royally screwed here, then yes, this is obviously the worst. But I think we also have to appreciate that we came into the season with a squad that we knew wasn't likely to be good enough unless a lot of things fell into place and we were clinical with our finishing. We got refereeing decisions. We didn't have injuries. And we've had none of that. For all that, I mean, I saw another comment. I can't remember who it was that posted it just now. That actually, we are not a team that should be on 9 points. If you look at so many of those games in the first 2 or 3 months, there were so many of them where we played. You could see the system, you could see the game plan, and the game plan basically worked until someone did something really stupid, or the opposition did something like that demonstrated the vast difference in quality. We were competitive in those first 3 or 4 months, and it is only kind of once you start getting into the sort of dark nights of winter, where you're still losing every week and you're finding new and imaginative ways of doing so. That's when kind of everybody's morale kind of hits the floor and it all falls apart, kind of wholesale. But I've said numerous times, I think, this season, that by the time Russell Martin got sacked, we should have been on 17, 18 points. But for all those reasons I list, and a few mistakes along the way in terms of selection, substitutions, that sort of systems and that sort of thing. We've not been that bad.
We had that little run of VAR decisions as well, didn't it? It seemed to happen for about 6 weeks running, where we just seemed to get shafted every single week, which clearly didn't help. But so I've had a couple of other manager suggestions come in. Ben Sharman has suggested, or has just chucked a name in there, Jesse Marsh. What's he doing these days? Isn't he something to do with
Canada?
Team Canada. I was going to say Team America.
Canadian national side.
Okay. Matthew Emerson, genuinely can't see us getting rid of Uric. Keep the faith. Hopefully we will. Michael Carrick. Someone's mentioned Michael Carrick. Keep Uric. Danny Smith. Keep Uric to the end of the season. Then get Michael Carrick. Done a good job at Borough last few years with little budget, having to sell his best players every summer. I don't find him the most inspiring, I have to say. We've had another couple of comments on Adam Armstrong. Keep or sell. Let's say Armstrong comes back and scores 20 plus. This is keep. I don't know how to pronounce that. Keep Inini. Let's say Armstrong comes back and scores 20 plus goals and we scrape up again. Do we need to give him another chance in the Prem, or accept he's not at that level? Martin?
Yeah, he's definitely. I think it's pretty clear now. He's had his opportunity in the Premier League, and he struggled. Adam Armstrong, he knows it. I think he knows his level. He's a brilliant Championship striker. Scores goals at that level, coming off the wing, playing in that sort of wider position. He's not an out and out nine. Even in the Championship, he's not an out and out nine. He really struggles in the Premier League. I think he almost needs two touches. You can get away with that in the Championship. You get so much more time on the ball. You don't get that in the Premier League. The Premier League is such a different level of pace, and I think if we can get back up again, if a lot has to be learned from the recruitment, but you need to have leaders in the door. You have to find players that have played at the level. You need a manager that knows the division, and you need a backbone in your team, don't you? You need the goalkeeper, centre back, central midfielder, striker. You need your backbone right, and then start to build around it, and then start giving yourself a chance to win games. Like grind results out. When Russell Martin came out at the start of the season, he came out of that comment with, "Oh yeah, we're not here to grind results out." Somebody said over on X, I think it was Chris, a minute ago. I read his comment, and he was saying, "Why didn't we ever play to grind out results? What why not?" And that's something that has really bugged me this year. It's really annoyed me.
We've only really tried. I mean, off the top of my head, I can only remember Arsenal and Manchester City away and Fulham away, where we set up. I mean, the City and Arsenal games away, which were either they were 1 week apart or very close to each other anyway. We basically set up 4-4-1-1. And it was like Ryan Manning on the left of midfield, and we tried to keep it tight, and we played reasonably well in both those two games against vastly superior opposition. And Steve mentioned the Fulham game, which was the one that Simon Rusk was responsible for before Uric got his hands on things and ruined everything. He set up the team to just defend, but obviously there was zero attacking threat that game. But the point stands. We do. Should we come back up, we do need to learn how to grind out results. I mean, that's the same. But to be honest, that's the same in every division. You can't expect to blow teams away. And even if you go in with the intention of playing expansive football, right from the start, it's not always possible. And you have to be able to change halfway through a game. And that's one of the things that does my head in about Uric. Has he ever made a substitution that isn't just shuffling deck chairs? Has he made a tactical change? Have we ever gone to a back four? Have we, or is it just, I'm just going to put these square pegs in these round holes where my formation is. So I'm just scanning down the comments. There was one good one that I did see. Formation. So even Uric has got this, what should we call it? 3-4-3 formation, whatever it is. We got promoted playing 4-3-3. Is that the way you'd see us going, Steve? Or do you think Saints can play three at the back? Because in my 50 years of watching, I don't really remember us ever really playing that well for any consistent period of time. There was a period under Alan Ball when we played it, and it was reasonably successful. But we had Matt Letizia in the middle of that at his absolute peak, which is a world of difference from what we got now. So back then it was, it was like 10 players working hard to give him the ball within that formation. What do you think we should go with next year?
I mean, I think it's one of those things where managers have got their systems, and most modern managers seem to be very kind of rigid in terms of what they want to try and do. They don't want to. I mean, I guess most managers don't want to overcomplicate things. There are some who obviously are at the very other end of the spectrum and do want to massively overcomplicate things and want to micromanage. But for the most part, I think most managers want to keep the system itself very simple, and then there will be little bits in game that will be a little bit more subtle and a little bit more complicated, and you work on the individual players concerned to do that. I mean, in terms of 3 at the back, 5 at the back, whichever way you kind of call that that formation of playing wing backs. I mean, we were vaguely successful for individual games, I think, under Ronald Koeman playing it. But Koeman, for me, has been the best tactical manager that we've had in my time as a Saints fan, in terms of his tactical flexibility and preparing the team for very specific opponents. And I mean, the problem you're going to have is in the Championship. Actually, most of the opponents are weaker than you, so you will be more often than not basically having your desired setup and just kind of maybe a few little tweaks here or there to counter certain strengths the opposition might have. Whereas if and when we were to go back up, then you're then going to be looking at it from a very different perspective. You're kind of not being able to play the way you want to play. You're kind of playing a way that limits the opposition's strengths as much as possible to give yourself a half decent fighting chance of getting something out of the game. So it's someone who is very who needs to be very very flexible on that sort of thing, not just in terms of the system, but also in terms of the messaging on that system. So I think you kind of go back to basics. You go 4 at the back, and then I think you probably mix up whether you have kind of 1 sitting deep or whether you have 2 sitting deep, depending on who you're playing against. And it won't necessarily be a case of, rubbish team, we're only going to play with 1 holding midfielder. It might make sense to play with 2 who are both good on the ball, who are able to then pick gaps between sort of through the lines and things like that. But yeah, certainly having that flexibility with, I think having normal fullbacks and normal defence where most defenders are most comfortable. You might mix it up in certain games. Like if we were playing Leeds again, for example, which I don't think we will be next season. Obviously they've got that kind of 4-pronged attack, which Russell Martin nullified brilliantly 3 times last season. And the 2 at the back end of the season, last league game of the regular season, and then at Wembley in the final, we played with wing backs, and actually that worked really well for us. Yeah. But it's picking your weapon for the right fight. And I think for most managers that will start with a back 4, and then you kind of work from there in terms of A, what you've got available, and B, what is likely to work best against the teams you're coming up against.
Okay. So I'm going to read out this question by Amelia Whitehorn. This is for Martin. This is the past. This is just a hypothetical. Do you think we'd be in a better situation currently if we kept Russell Martin, both points wise and dressing room morale wise?
It's a really good question. It was, I think, the way that we got beaten against Spurs was really, really bad. But then we've done the same under
players have stopped running, haven't they?
Yeah, players have stopped running. They're down tools. I didn't really see a way back for him. I think any longer it had gone on, it just would have got worse. And he was constantly called out for a style of football. It was in the mainstream media. Everybody was talking about it. He was never going to be adaptable, and we've spoken a lot tonight about managers not having another way to play football. I find it absolutely crazy in the modern age that these managers are not adaptable, that can't find different ways to play against certain teams, like Ronald Koeman would do. Why can't we see a right back at right back? Why can't we see a left back at left back and play people that are comfortable in their positions?
Yeah.
And that's what I would like to see. It's so difficult, wasn't it? You could have stuck with Russell and kept going, but how much further down the road could we have gone? We would have kept losing games. You have to try something different to give yourself a chance. To just try to make that change too late. It was just a change that was too late, and then that you're limited to who you can bring in. Then anyway, you're not going to get David Moyes at that stage because we were doomed already.
Yeah, very difficult. So Terry, our resident Bournemouth fan, has offered us Scott Parker if Burnley don't make it. Well, careful what you wish for, Terry, because Mr. Iriola will be on the radar of some bigger and better clubs than you later on this season and in the summer. So careful what you wish for. Matthew Emerson, that's a really good suggestion. Liam Rossinia would be one, but not sure he would leave Strasbourg. I think I've not really been keeping in touch with how he's been getting on at Strasbourg, but he was a manager who did very well for Hull, and it was a ridiculous. It seemed a ridiculous decision on the face of it for them to get rid of him.
Well, look at the league table now. They are third bottom.
Who's their manager?
Mr. Sellers.
Who's Mr. Sellers?
Who, in fairness, has improved them slightly.
Yeah. So, looking down, Lopetegui, can't see that one.
No, too expensive. Too much of a misery guts. And he seems to have kind of burnt his bridges very, very quickly with both of his Premier League gigs. Wolves, it all went south when he walked out. 4 days before the start of the season. Yeah. And obviously, I mean, West Ham is West Ham, and it's always prone to collapsing in on you when the chairman's son is briefing every single newspaper about you and sort of on the quiet. So that was always doomed to failure as well, I suspect.
There's an interesting one about St Mary's from Oliver Mackerel. Has the Northern Fan Zone and the safe standing bit worked for us? Work for an improvement this season. Sorry, I read that out. It didn't make a lot of sense. Has the northern end improved things and all the jazz that's going on outside the ground and whatnot? Admittedly, results haven't helped. I mean, Steve, you stand on it. What have you sort of made of the experience this year with regards to atmosphere and the away fans not being? Because I've heard it said two ways. Some people say that we've surrendered some sort of advantage that we had by moving the away fans. I'm not sure about that myself. What have you sort of made of the Northern safe standing bit this season?
Mixed, I think. But then it's in its first year of this configuration, and I think it's going to take a few years of people kind of getting used to it. And the problem, and I think this was something that a lot of people identified when they first announced that was what was going to happen, was that people who naturally migrated towards the Northern, even if they weren't in the old bit of the Northern before, everybody's kind of a little bit fragmented. So you've got little factions dotted around here and there in the Northern who want to generate some noise, but there's not a huge amount of kind of coordination or coherence between sections. So someone in block 41 might start something, and 40 and 42 either side can hear it and they might join in. But at the same time, someone over in 44 has already started something else. And therefore, you kind of almost get the stand kind of singing songs against each other. And it in that sense, it's frustrating and it doesn't quite work. But ultimately, I think in terms of having a wall of noise, the idea is fine. It just needs a little bit of fine tuning, and I think ultimately it's just a bit of time and patience. I mean, the away end being where it is. I mean, in terms of noise, it shouldn't make a difference really, because ultimately it's all the way down that end, shoved in a corner, and they've got kind of the family section and day trippers sat either side of them. So there's nobody there antagonising them, which should in theory work to our favour, because generally it's someone or a group of home fans antagonising the away fans that then suddenly starts kind of provokes some kind of chant towards them, and we don't have that with the setup as it is now, because everybody's down 100 yards away down the other end of the ground. So I think, I mean, I guess the problem with having, I mean, the biggest problem we've had this season is so many away fans in the home end that has
Way too many.
It's proved a distraction for people because people are more concerned with somebody standing or sitting near them who's an away fan than actually what's going on the pitch. And I think that's proven a distraction. hasn't been a help. And ultimately, the club need to do something about that. That's for sure. I mean, their argument would be, well, a home fan has sold them their ticket. It was like, well, okay, fine, find them, and deal with it. It shouldn't be difficult, and it's happening a lot. But I think the Northern as a general concept is fine. As I say, needs a little bit of fine tuning, a little bit of patience. The fan zone, I think, has been more successful than anybody would have possibly anticipated, given how much of a struggle it is to get a point in there in like the hour and a half or so before kickoff. But yeah, I mean, as he rightly said, the atmosphere overall in the ground, when you're now in this situation where everyone turns up expecting to be beaten 4-0 by Brighton.
Yeah. I mean,
it's very difficult
so
to get yourself up for it.
I mean, it'd be interesting to see what happens next season. I mean, whether we score 90 goals again or not. If we have games where we are scoring a few goals, it will be interesting to see where the atmosphere goes. Because the bottom line is, I think you've got to have something to get behind. It's very difficult to get behind absolutely nothing. So I don't think this season, with it being the first one and with the football being as crap as it has been, I don't think it's a really good. I don't think we've had enough yet to be able to make a judgment on whether it's the right thing or not. So moving on. This is an interesting question from Paul Garrett. How do we feel about playing Portsmouth next season? Now, some people might not be old enough even to remember what it was like playing Portsmouth at St Mary's. It's I mean, from what I remember, it's very different. There's a definite edge to the game simply because of who it is, regardless of how the two teams are playing. It will be interesting from the point of view of the reconfiguration of the ground, how they do all that, because it's I mean, I sit in the chapel end. I think you do as well, Martin, and you can kind of freely mingle with the away fans before the game. Obviously, that's not going to be the case for that one. Well, I would hope it's not anyway. So I'll go to you with that one, Martin. What do you think about playing the boys from down the road?
I'm kind of quite excited by it in a way. And like you say, a lot of people have not seen it. And for anybody that hasn't seen it, it's well worth having a look on YouTube at Copper 90 Derby Days. It's a really good documentary, and they give you an insight into that derby, the South Coast derby, and they look at both cities and why there is such a hatred between the two cities. And it is one of the fiercest rivalries in the UK, and it never happens that often. And when it does happen, it is special, isn't it? I honestly believe that you need, on a day like that, you need everybody playing for one another. You need a club united. You need players that are going to run for each other. You're going to have to want to win every tackle. They're a cup final, aren't they? And they're different to that normal football game. Everybody wants to win it. Each team, there's so much passion. But we wouldn't want to turn up with the side we've got right now and go down Fratton Park, but they give us a bit of a game, wouldn't they? We'd probably get rolled over. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited by it. I'm really excited by it.
Yeah, I don't think this current team can beat an egg, let alone any other team that was really, really up for it. And I've made another food reference there. Someone asked about the fry up earlier on. I ignored that one. Sorry, moved on from that. So yeah, I mean, Steve, you were talking about your 1,000 games last week. You fancy another trip to Fratton Park?
Oh, I was hoping to avoid it, to be honest. It was kind of better when, I mean, much like they had a relatively long period after that FA Cup game when we were in League One. And also sort of the time when we got relegated in 2005, there was that long period where we just couldn't, where obviously we didn't play them, but the previous game against them had been that 4-1 defeat at Fratton, where, I mean, it was 4-1 at half time. It was just absolutely abysmal. And you kind of, at that point, they had the wood on us because they've got the bragging rights, because the last time we met, they absolutely smashed us. But now the tables have turned, because of course the last time we met was in the Carabao Cup in 2019, and we won 4-0 at Fratton Park. So I would have been quite happy to just drop down into the Championship. They go back into League One, and we can carry on with, well, I mean, lads, you're only as good as your last game. You know the way this works. But yeah, I mean, it's the problem with games like those are that the hype around them. I mean, the quality is never any good in these games. They're always terrible games because the crowd is always so up for it, and the players, no matter how good they are or how sort of they're able to tune out all the surrounding noise, they will still end up. It will still end up being basically someone goes and boots someone up in the air, and all of a sudden everything's utter carnage. And you, like, systems and stuff kind of go out the window. Tactics, form, all the old cliches about derby games. Those cliches come about because quite often they are proven true. It's a bizarre thing that sort of in the game where I mean, especially in derbies like ours that don't get played that often. I mean, I don't think it's remotely the same in games like the Manchester derby or United against Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs, things like that, because they play each other every season. Yeah. But we don't play Pompey every year, so everything gets ramped up, and I do kind of worry that, depending on when those games are scheduled, that you run the risk that everybody's mind from about a month beforehand, for the home and the away game, everybody's mind is pointing towards that derby game, and you take your eye off the ball from the bread and butter of those. I mean, you're potentially going to have 6 or 7 games in the intervening period that all need to be won if we're looking at getting promoted again, and the distraction is a problem. And
I can't remember if it was a problem, because obviously the last time we played in the league was in the Championship in 2011, 12. Yeah. And obviously we drew both games, though they will say they won the last one with a last-minute equaliser. But I mean, obviously, basically. Yeah, it didn't derail us. I mean, at the end of the day, we got promoted, they got relegated, so that was a good outcome all round. But I'm not going to lie, it does grate a little bit that we didn't beat them in the league last time. But that Carabao Cup win certainly put a lot of that to bed. So so we've had a couple of players mentioned as potential good signings. Tim Loader mentioned Josh Sargent from Norwich as a striker. Probably the sort of player we could get if we wanted to, but he's
again Championship only, isn't it? It's
is he capable of stepping up? Don't think so. Sam Edozie. Sam Edozie obviously been out on loan this year. I know he started relatively well, but does anyone know what he's been up to recently?
No. Let me have a quick look.
No. The Southampton Stand have put Steve Cooper forward as a potential manager. I mean, he was linked before, wasn't he?
Yeah. I mean, his style is a little bit. It's probably one that will rub people up the wrong way, I imagine. Always keen to blame the referee when his team don't win. It's never his fault or anything that he or his team has done, which obviously grates fairly quickly. Quite a defensive-minded manager, which, I mean, actually this season might have been quite useful. And I still maintain that Leicester basically pissed away their only chance of staying up when they sacked him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But ultimately, the Leicester fans think they're bigger and better than they are, and didn't like him from the start because he came from Forest. But I mean, it's a very one-sided rivalry. That Forest don't give a toss about them.
It's Arsenal Bournemouth, isn't it? I just got this this question to finish. Thanks to everyone who's put their questions in. I'm going to go with this one because it's about the future rather than the past. This is Ryan Prince. Guys, question for you all. What are your general feelings on next season's hopes? I think as it stands, we're going to have problems finishing top 2. Could be down a few seasons to bounce back. So if I come to Martin with that one first, what do you kind of want and expect from next season?
Well, we only dropped out for the year last time round. I think, like I said earlier, I think you almost have to look at what Sport Republic done well last time round in that summer. I think it all comes down to manager. I think someone else had mentioned in the chat, would we realistically be looking at top 6 with Juric in charge? I personally don't think so. I don't think he's the man to get us instant promotion back to the Premier League. I still think we need somebody similar to what Russell did, that knows the division. You need someone that knows the division, that's a winner, and that's going to be able to, they're going to need to bring him the tools first and foremost. You need to get your squad right. You're going to need to have a clear identity. And I think when you talk about identity, it's about the ownership and the board and the manager all having a clear idea of what players they want and what they don't want. I think there's no doubt that January's just gone. I know already that that what the board wanted and the manager wasn't aligned. Everybody needs to be aligned on what they're going to do. And if everyone's aligned and everybody's going in the same direction, like we were under Russell with Jason Wilcox, we need to have a real clear vision of where we want to go. And if they can get that right nice and quickly in the summer, I think we'll have a really good chance of going back up if they can bring the right tools in and the right man to do it. I think it's got a massive summer. When you look at summers, this will be one of the biggest summers we'll ever face, because if you get it wrong and we continue to do what we've done, we will struggle and we will end up stuck in that division. And we don't want to end up stuck in that division. This time round, let's go one better and try and win the league. That's what I like to see. I like to see us challenging for the division.
Yeah. Okay, Steve, over to you for that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think my bigger fears of the Championship were when we went down 2 years ago, because I think at that time there was a whole load of uncertainty as to what we were about to face, because we'd not been in the division for 11, 12 years. So it was all a little bit new to us. And we came down, we had that horrible September, but other than that, we largely breezed through most of the season, finishing comfortably in the top 4. And I think we go down with our eyes wide open. We know what to expect from the Championship now. And actually, I think the Championship is going to be weaker next season than it was last season. And as long as we don't make a complete pig's ear of recruitment, which, I mean, I've said before that recruitment it's a lot of it is percentages, a lot of it is a little bit of luck, as well as identifying players who have got certain attributes, because you've still got to put it all together and hope that key players don't get injured. Your star striker scores enough goals to win you enough games. Your keeper makes important saves. All the basics that you hope for from a successful team. A lot of it still comes down to a little bit of good fortune on the recruitment front, and I think we're. I mean, let's be blunt about this. We're long overdue. Some, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you both said there. Obviously, appointing a manager is crucial. It needs to be someone that at least, gets people thinking that we might have a chance next year. The recruitment has got to be right. I'd be interested to see how we use the loan market, because part of the issue this year has been that we had to spend basically 40 million on Harwood-Bellis and Downs to keep the team at the same level as the one that got promoted. So in an ideal world, you wouldn't, you'd build a team to get promoted without having, loan players that are going to cost you 20, 25 million to buy. But whether that's possible or not, I suspect it isn't these days, and you will have to use that market. Obviously, we had the connection with Jason Wilcox and Manchester City before to allow us to get players in. So it'll be interesting to see what relationships we have with the new director of football, and whether that means we'll be getting more players in from abroad. Because when we recruited under Russell, Martin, and Jason Wilcox, it was British-based players basically. So yeah, and I would like. I never felt like we targeted the top two last time we were down, and I think that's essential if you're talking about looking further ahead and trying to survive in the Premier League. You have to give yourself the best chance, and that is not taking an extra month in the playoffs, even though we all had a great day up at Wembley, which is something we need to remind ourselves of going into the season, what that felt like. And I think you've got to try and put this season behind you, and if we're up near the top of the league next year, then we've got to we've got to want to get promoted. We've got to get behind the team, and and hope that Sport Republic learn from their mistakes. So that's all I've got to say. Other than thanks once again for everyone's questions, and thanks to everyone for listening in. Alfie got stuck in traffic coming back from the West Country, which is why he's not here. So apologies for that as well. So yeah, that's the end of this for today. Our next pod is on the 9th after we've played Wolves and probably put another nail in our Liverpool. Sorry, after we play Liverpool, which I'm sure will be tremendous. So what could possibly go wrong there? So we'll see you all after the Liverpool game. So thanks very much for tuning in.